So let's talk about writing specifically and process. And I know this is a big open-ended question, and I have some specific ones I'm going to follow it up with. But I'm just curious, because you are a teacher and you're a writer both.
Yeah.
And so presumably you're teaching about process, and then you're constantly developing your own and honing your own and learning more about your own. So just at a high level, what would you say about your process or how you teach process or any sort of angle you want to take on that?
All right. I think that one of the things I like to talk about is that this place of experimentation, that it's all an experiment, and that, well, it is all an experiment. It's all one big experiment or little experiment, life, writing, everything.
Yeah.
And just that notion of everything can be an experiment, and you can keep going with your writing by saying, well, I'm going to experiment by listening to that thought after the first draft, even by letting the subconscious, befriending the subconscious first, having a practice, developing a practice, befriending the subconscious so that can do work for you, because it will do a lot of work for us. You know this. It will do a lot of work for us. There are things that we couldn't possibly come up with without some sort of other weird force going on behind our heads where we're not looking.
Yep.
And then, so developing the practice, befriending the subconscious, and then moving into curiosity and wonder, like what catches, whatever catches, what's catching. So if I'm giving myself an exercise, I just move towards it and I keep going. And if I find something, I find something.
Yep.
So that other part of it would be great generosity. So having the writing accompany me at all times as I'm walking through the world, and just living my life, and then generosity in the writing practice.
What does that mean, generosity?
Generosity meaning I take what's given to me. I follow what's coming out onto the page. I follow the mood. Especially with all of my work, but with this book, I just have learned over years and years of developing and being in a practice to feel what's coming out on the page in terms of a mood or a color that I'm stepping into and a world that I'm stepping into. And then I follow it. If I find something, fabulous. If I don't find something later on, fine.
Right.
I just keep going. I just move forward.
Would you call some of this intuition?
I would call most of my early writing practice, what I do, would be intuition
and trusting that.
I would say intuition, but it's also intuition mixed with a lot of feeding my subconscious literature, and not just feeding it literature, but feeding it literature like a writer. I read as a writer, and I teach this.
Right.
That how do we read as a writer? How do we become curious about the orchestration of this piece? And looking closely at that, and just absorbing, not clinging to it, but just absorbing and kind of making my own what is my own. So years and years and years of absorbing craft.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I try to find a balance between, because I do this more even with, say, if I'm watching something on Netflix, I can't help but sit there and analyze the characters and the narrative and how they're structuring things. And if it's comedy, how the comedy is set up. But at the same time, I'm trying not to go too far. Like you said, I think you just said clinging to it, or however you phrase that, because I also still want to enjoy it. Like I want to read The Fifth Woman, for example, and I want to enjoy it, even though I know I'm going to interview you. So I'm also trying to look at it from the perspective of a writer. Yeah. So I try to find some sort of middle ground, because otherwise everything becomes an academic exercise. But at the same time, I'm so fascinated by each author or each whatever creative person's process and how they're putting things together, and that I can't help from look at it through that lens. And I enjoy looking at it through that lens.